The morning sun barely pierces through the Atlanta fog as Sarah Thompson's sleek black Honda cuts through empty streets. Her muscles still ache from yesterday's training, but the Olympics wait for no one. The digital clock on her dashboard reads 5:47 a.m. Another day of pushing her limits begins before most of the city stirs from sleep. Sarah adjusts her rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of her determined face. Dark circles under her eyes tell the story of countless pre-dawn training sessions, but there's an unmistakable fire in her gaze. The upcoming Olympic trials are just months away, and every second of preparation counts. The familiar route to the training facility feels different this morning. Construction has forced her to take a detour through an unfamiliar neighborhood where Victorian homes line narrow streets. She slows down, navigating carefully through the residential area, mindful of the early hour and sleeping residents. The flash of blue lights in her rearview mirror shatters her focus. Sarah's heart rate spikes, not from exertion this time, but from a sudden surge of anxiety. She immediately activates her turn signal and pulls over to the curb, muscle memory from conversations she's had countless times with young athletes about interactions with law enforcement. Her hands find their place at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, visible and still. The cruiser's door opens with a metallic creak that seems to echo through the quiet street. In her side mirror, Sarah watches the officer approach, his hand resting casually on his utility belt. Her training kicks in, not the kind that wins medals, but the kind black parents teach their children from an early age. License and registration, the officer demands, his flashlight beam sweeping through her car interior despite the growing daylight. Sarah keeps her movements slow and deliberate as she reaches for her documents, narrating each action. My registration is in the glove compartment, officer. I'm going to reach for it now. The officer, his nameplate reads Davidson, studies her license with exaggerated thoroughness. Miss Thompson, do you know why I pulled you over this morning? Sarah furrows her brow, genuinely confused. No, sir, I don't. I've been extra careful because of the detour. You ran through a stop sign back there, Officer Davidson states flatly, gesturing vaguely behind them. Clear violation of Traffic Code 40-672. Sir, Sarah pauses, choosing her words carefully. I didn't see a stop sign. Could we possibly go back and check? I think it might be obscured by the trees. I would never intentionally. Step out of the vehicle, please, Officer Davidson interrupts, his tone leaving no room for discussion. Sarah's stomach tightens, but she complies, emerging from her car with the same controlled movements. The morning air feels colder now, or maybe it's just her nerves. Her national team jacket offers little comfort as she stands on the curb, watching Officer Davidson walk back toward the intersection. To her surprise, he motions for her to follow. They'd retrace her route, their footsteps echoing off the historic homes. There, partially hidden behind a massive oak's spring foliage, stands the stop sign in question. Only the bottom third is visible from the approaching angle. Sarah reaches for her phone. Officer, may I document this? The sign is clearly obscured by the branches. Officer Davidson's face remains impassive. Doesn't change the fact that you ran it, ma'am. Sign's still there, visible or not. You're responsible for knowing the traffic patterns. He's already writing the ticket, his pen scratching against the paper pad with finality. Sarah accepts the citation with a quiet dignity, but her mind is already calculating the hours of coaching she'll have to sacrifice to pay this fine. As she watches Officer Davidson's cruiser pull away, the sun finally breaks through the morning fog, illuminating the hidden stop sign like nature's own ironic spotlight. 2 weeks later, Sarah pushes through the heavy bronze doors of the Atlanta Municipal Court, the morning humidity already clinging to her skin. She'd squeezed in a shortened training session before her 9 a.m. hearing, her hair still damp from the quick shower, pulled back in a tight bun that speaks more of practicality than style. The security line snakes through the lobby, a cross-section of Atlanta's population, all sharing the same anxious expression. Sarah takes her place behind a man in a crisp business suit who keeps checking his Rolex and in front of a young mother juggling both a baby carrier and a toddler who's fascinated by Sarah's bright running shoes. "Those are pretty," the toddler declares, pointing at Sarah's neon blue Nikes. Sarah smiles, remembering the kids she coaches who wear hand-me-down sneakers with holes. The sponsorship money that could have paid this ticket has already been earmarked for new equipment for her youth program. The security guard barely glances at Sarah's athlete ID as she passes through the metal detector. Her track jacket and leggings stand out sharply against the sea of formal wear filling the courthouse. A few disapproving looks follow her as she makes her way to Courtroom 3B, but Sarah holds her head high. She'd chosen to come straight from training, not out of disrespect, but because every missed practice puts her Olympic dreams at risk. Inside the courtroom, the wooden benches are already packed. Sarah finds a spot near the back, squeezing in between a nervous teenager and an elderly gentleman who is muttering about parking tickets. The air conditioning hums overhead, battling against the body heat of too many people in too small a space. The bailiff's voice cuts through the low murmur of conversation every few minutes, calling out names that echo off the wood-paneled walls. Sarah watches as case after case moves forward with assembly line efficiency. Most defendants speak for less than 2 minutes before their fates are decided. A young public defender catches Sarah's eye from across the room. She's juggling multiple case files, her coffee cup precariously balanced on top of the stack. For a moment, their gazes meet in mutual recognition of the system's grinding pace. The defender offers a small, tired smile before turning back to her next client. Hours tick by on the analog clock above the judge's empty bench. Sarah uses the time to review her photos of the obscured stop sign, each swipe of her phone screen revealing another angle of the violation she's certain she couldn't have avoided. The teenager next to her peers over curiously. "That's messed up," he whispers, pointing to the most damning photo where the sign is almost completely hidden by foliage. "They got you on that." Sarah nods, about to respond when the courtroom doors swing open. A hush falls over the room as Judge William Barrett strides in, his black robe billowing slightly with each authoritative step. His reputation precedes him, known for his strict interpretation of traffic laws and his intolerance for excuses. The afternoon session begins, and Sarah watches as the judge lives up to his reputation. A student late for an exam receives no sympathy. A delivery driver with a spotless record still pays full price for his speeding ticket. The elderly gentleman next to Sarah whispers a prayer when his name is called. Finally, after 3 hours of waiting, the bailiff's voice rings out. "Sarah Thompson, case number 2024-TR3856. Sarah rises, her legs slightly stiff from sitting so long. As she makes her way to the front of the courtroom, she feels the weight of every eye following her progress. In her mind, she hears her coach's voice. Approach every hurdle with confidence, even if you can't see what's on the other side. Little does she know, this particular hurdle will become more significant than any she's faced on the track. Judge William Barrett's voice slices through the courtroom like a steel blade. "Miss Thompson, approach the podium." His tone carries the weariness of someone who's heard every excuse imaginable and believes none of them. The afternoon sun streaming through the tall windows catches his silver hair, creating an almost halo-like effect that contrasts sharply with his stern demeanor. Sarah steps forward, her running shoes silent against the worn carpet. The podium feels like starting blocks before a race, but this is a different kind of challenge entirely. She stands straight, shoulders back, the posture of someone who's faced pressure before. The judge barely looks up from his papers, his eyes scanning her case file with practiced indifference. "You're charged with running a stop sign on Oakwood Avenue," Judge Barrett states, his voice carrying the weight of 30 years on the bench. "How do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor," Sarah responds, her voice clear and steady. "If I may explain." "Miss Thompson," Judge Barrett interrupts, finally looking up. His eyes narrow at her athletic wear, and his lips purse in visible disapproval. "This is a court of law, not a gym. Did you not consider more appropriate attire?" The courtroom falls silent, heavy with tension. Sarah feels her cheeks warm, but maintains her composure. "I apologize for my appearance, Your Honor. I came directly from training. I'm preparing for the Olympic." The Olympics. Judge Barrett's skepticism drips from each syllable. "Miss Thompson, this court sees dozens of creative excuses each day. Let's stick to the matter at hand." Sarah reaches for her phone. "Your Honor, I have evidence showing the stop sign was obscured by overgrown branches. If I could just—" "Young lady," Judge Barrett's voice rises slightly. "Putting aside your inappropriate attire, you seem to misunderstand the gravity of these proceedings. A traffic violation is a traffic violation. The law doesn't care about your training schedule or your Olympic aspirations." The young public defender from earlier shifts uncomfortably in her seat, recognizing the familiar signs of the judge's mounting irritation. The mother with the toddler holds her child closer, the tension in the room palpable. "Your Honor, please," Sarah persists, her Olympic training evident in her refusal to give up. The sign was completely hidden behind. Judge Barrett's gavel cracks against the sound block, the sharp report making several spectators jump. "Miss Thompson, your continued attempts to justify your violation and your casual approach to these proceedings leave me no choice. I'm imposing the maximum fine of $500. Sarah's stomach drops. $500 meant 5 fewer pairs of shoes for her young athletes, 5 fewer sets of training equipment, 5 fewer opportunities to help kids find their path through sports as she had. Additionally, Judge Barrett continues, his voice carrying a note of finality, "Let this serve as a reminder that this court deserves respect, starting with appropriate dress and behavior. You have 30 days to pay the fine." Next case. Sarah reaches for her wallet, determined to handle this setback with the same grace she shows on the track. The courtroom has begun its usual shuffle of movement as the next case is called, but a sudden commotion near the clerk's desk draws everyone's attention. The young clerk, who had been scrolling through his phone during a brief lull, nearly knocks over his chair as he hurries to the judge's bench. His face shows a mix of excitement and urgency as he leans in to whisper something to Judge Barrett, holding out his phone like evidence in a murder trial. The transformation that comes over Judge Barrett's face happens slowly, like a sunrise over the Atlanta skyline. First, his eyes widen slightly, then his stern mouth softens, and finally, the color rises in his cheeks as he looks back at Sarah, seeing her, truly seeing her, for the first time since she entered his courtroom. The young clerk's phone screen illuminates Judge Barrett's face with a soft blue glow as he stares at the image before him. It's from last week's Sports Illustrated feature. Sarah Thompson clearing a hurdle, her body parallel to the ground, muscles defined in perfect form. The American flag colors of her uniform brilliant against the stadium backdrop. The headline reads, "America's Next Olympic Golden Girl. Sarah Thompson's Journey from Atlanta's Streets to Track and Field Greatness." Judge Barrett's reading glasses slip down his nose as he looks from the phone to Sarah, then back to the phone. The courtroom remains frozen in curious silence. The usual shuffling of papers and whispered conversations completely ceased. The bailiff, sensing something significant is happening, takes a few steps closer to the bench. "Miss Thompson." Judge Barrett's voice has lost its earlier edge, replaced by something that sounds almost like embarrassment. "You're Sarah Thompson, the track and field athlete." Sarah stands tall at the podium, her Olympic training jacket suddenly seeming less inappropriate and more like a badge of honor. "Yes, Your Honor. That's what I was trying to explain. I was heading to morning training when she broke the national record last month." The clerk can't contain himself, earning a sharp look from the judge. "Sorry, Your Honor, but she ran the 400-meter hurdles in 52.75 seconds. It's the fastest time in the world this year." Murmurs ripple through the courtroom as recognition spreads. The teenager from the back bench whispers loudly to his mother, "I told you she looked familiar." The young public defender is now scrolling through her own phone, her eyes widening as she finds confirmation. Judge Barrett removes his glasses, polishing them with deliberate slowness as he processes this new information. His earlier dismissiveness of Sarah's Olympic mentions weighs heavily in the air. The clerk, still buzzing with excitement, continues to swipe through his phone. "Your Honor, look," he says, showing another image. This one's from the local news. Sarah's surrounded by young athletes at her community training program, all wearing donated running shoes and bright smiles. The caption details how she uses her sponsorship money to fund youth athletics in underserved Atlanta neighborhoods. The judge's complexion has taken on a distinctly rosy hue. The same authoritative demeanor that had dismissed Sarah's evidence now seems to shrink in his chair. His gaze falls to her running shoes, then to her training jacket, seeing them not as signs of disrespect, but as the tools of her profession. "Miss Thompson," he begins again, his tone completely transformed. "I believe you were about to show us some evidence regarding the stop sign." Sarah nods, unlocking her phone with steady hands. The courtroom holds its collective breath as she approaches the bench, her photos ready to display. The same evidence that had been dismissed minutes ago now commands the judge's full attention. From the gallery, the mother with the toddler whispers to her child, "Watch carefully, baby." That's what determination looks like. The young public defender has abandoned all pretense of working on her other cases, fully invested in this unexpected turn of events. As Sarah swipes through her photos, Judge Barrett's face continues its remarkable transformation. Each image of the obscured stop sign seems to chip away at his earlier certainty, replacing it with a growing realization of his hasty judgment. The same eyes that had barely glanced at Sarah now study every detail of her evidence with intense focus. The clerk stands nearby, practically bouncing on his toes, looking like he's watching his favorite athlete win a race. In a way, he is. But this victory isn't being measured in seconds or meters. It's measured in the slow but undeniable shift of justice, finding its proper course. The courtroom's whispers grow into a gentle hum as spectators share fragments of Sarah Thompson's story with their neighbors. The clerk, now fully embracing his role as impromptu biographer, pulls up article after article on his phone, each one revealing another layer of Sarah's impact on the community. "Did you know?" he eagerly tells the bailiff, who's drawn closer to the clerk's desk. "She started her youth program with just 3 kids and a broken stopwatch." The bailiff raises his eyebrows, genuinely impressed. Now she's got over 50 young athletes, and 4 of them qualified for state championships last year. Judge Barrett listens intently as the stories unfold, his earlier stern demeanor replaced by growing amazement. The young public defender, momentarily forgetting professional decorum, raises her hand like an eager student. "Your Honor, if I may." Miss Thompson was featured in our Bar Association newsletter last month for her work with juvenile offenders. She's been using sports as an intervention program. Sarah stands quietly at the podium, her humility evident in her slight smile. The morning's training fatigue seems to have evaporated as the courtroom learns about her journey. A gray-haired woman in the back row suddenly speaks up, her voice carrying years of authority. "I remember her from Cedar Grove High," the woman announces. "She turns out to be a retired teacher. That child would be out on our track before sunrise, running hurdles with broken shoes. We used to leave the lights on early just for her." The stories continue to cascade through the courtroom. Someone remembers seeing Sarah running through Piedmont Park in the rain, leading a group of teenagers who couldn't afford gym memberships. Another recalls how she turned an abandoned lot into a makeshift training ground, bringing her own equipment from home. "The Olympic trials are in 3 months," the clerk adds, his phone seemingly endless in its supply of Sarah Thompson facts. She's favored to win, and her qualifying times are already close to the world record. Judge Barrett's eyes fix on Sarah's training jacket, now seeing it as a symbol of dedication rather than disrespect. "Miss Thompson," he says, his voice softer than before, "perhaps you could tell us more about your community work." Sarah straightens, her athlete's posture reflecting years of discipline. "It's pretty simple, Your Honor. When I was growing up, someone believed in me enough to give me a chance. Now I'm just trying to pass that belief along." She gestures to her training wear. "That's why I'm dressed like this. Every minute of training counts, not just for me, but for the kids who are watching." The mother with the toddler nods knowingly. "My nephew's in her program," she offers. She found out he was running in his school shoes and bought him his first pair of real running spikes. Didn't even tell anyone about it. More details emerge. How Sarah uses her sponsorship money to fund equipment for underprivileged athletes. How she schedules her Olympic training around mentoring sessions. How she's turned down lucrative offers to train elsewhere because she refuses to abandon her community program. The clerk, still scrolling, lets out a low whistle. "Look at this. Last month's storm damaged the community track's hurdles. She paid for the repairs herself rather than cancel training for her kids." Judge Barrett's face shows the weight of each revelation. The sane woman he dismissed minutes ago emerges as not just an athlete, but a pillar of the community he serves. His gavel lies untouched on the bench, no longer a symbol of authority, but a reminder of how quickly he judged based on appearances. Sarah stands through it all with characteristic grace, her presence in the courtroom now feeling less like a defendant and more like an unwitting testament to perseverance and service. Judge Barrett removes his glasses with trembling fingers, setting them carefully on the bench before him. The weight of his hasty judgment presses down on his shoulders like a physical burden. He picks up Sarah's phone, now displaying the damning evidence of the obscured stop sign, and forces himself to study each photo with the attention he should have given them initially. "Miss Thompson," he says, his voice carrying a note of weariness that wasn't there before, "would you walk me through exactly what happened that morning?" The question comes not from a place of authority now, but from genuine desire to understand. Sarah steps closer to the bench, her movements carrying the same fluid grace she shows on the track. "I was taking a detour because of the construction on Ponce de Leon, Your Honor. The normal route to the training facility was blocked." She zooms in on one of the photos. From this angle, you can see how the oak tree's branches completely cover the sign. The morning fog made it even harder to spot. The young clerk, still serving as an impromptu researcher, raises his hand. "Your Honor, I've pulled up the city's maintenance records. That section of Oakwood Avenue hasn't had tree trimming services in 18 months. There are 3 other reported incidents at the same intersection." Judge Barrett leans back in his chair, his usual rigid posture softening. The afternoon sun streaming through the high windows casts long shadows across the courtroom, marking the passage of time since this hearing began. He thinks about how quickly he'd dismissed her, how his assumptions about her appearance had colored his judgment. The city has a responsibility to maintain clear signage, he muses, almost to himself. Then, louder, Officer Davidson's report mentions nothing about the visibility issues with the sign. He shuffles through the papers before him, seeing them with new eyes. From the gallery, the retired teacher speaks up again. "Judge Barrett, if I may. I've driven through that intersection myself. Those branches have been a problem for months. Several of us have called the city about it." The judge nods slowly, then turns to the clerk. "Pull up Ms. Thompson's driving record, please." The clerk taps at his computer, then breaks into a smile. "Completely clean, Your Honor. Not so much as a parking ticket in 7 years." Sarah stands quietly, her dignity intact despite the morning's ordeal. The same patience that allows her to train for hours, perfecting every hurdle approach, now helps her wait as justice slowly writes itself. Judge Barrett reviews the evidence one final time, his earlier dismissiveness transformed into methodical attention to detail. He examines the timestamps on the photos, correlates them with the officer's report, and studies the angle of the morning sun in relation to the obscured sign. "Miss Thompson," he begins, his tone completely transformed from their earlier interaction. "I find myself in the unusual position of having to reconsider not just this case, but my own approach to justice." He pauses, choosing his next words carefully. "Your evidence is compelling, but what's more compelling is how quickly I dismissed it based on preconceptions that had no place in this courtroom. The young public defender watches intently, her case files forgotten in her lap. The mother with the toddler holds her breath. Even the bailiff seems to lean forward slightly, sensing the gravity of the moment. Judge Barrett picks up his gavel, then sets it down again without using it. This moment, he decides, deserves more than a perfunctory bang of wooden hammer. This moment deserves the full weight of consideration he should have given it from the start. The silence in courtroom 3B feels almost sacred as Judge Barrett rises from his chair, something he rarely does during proceedings. The afternoon sun has shifted, casting long shadows across the wood-paneled walls, but no one has made a move to leave despite the late hour. Even those waiting for their own cases seem to understand they're witnessing something extraordinary. "Miss Thompson," he begins, his voice carrying none of its earlier sharpness. "In 30 years on this bench, I've made thousands of decisions, some right, some wrong, but all made with the belief that I was serving justice to the best of my ability." He pauses, removing his glasses and placing them carefully on the bench. "Today, I failed in that duty." Sarah stands at the podium, her posture relaxed but dignified. The same poise that serves her over hurdles now helps her navigate this unexpected moment with grace. "Your Honor, she starts, but Judge Barrett raises his hand gently. "Please, let me finish." He steps down from the bench, an unprecedented move that causes the bailiff to shift uncertainly. "When you entered this courtroom, I saw what I expected to see, someone who didn't respect our proceedings enough to dress appropriately. I didn't see an Olympic athlete rushing between training sessions. I didn't see a community leader investing in our youth. I didn't see a woman who has overcome countless hurdles, both literal and figurative." The young clerk beams from his desk, proud of his role in this revelation. The public defender has pulled out her phone, fingers hovering over it, as if torn between documenting this moment and simply experiencing it. "What worse than what I didn't see," Judge Barrett continues, now standing at ground level with Sarah, "is what I refused to see. Your evidence was clear. Your explanation was reasonable. Your demeanor was respectful. Yet I dismissed all of it because it didn't fit my preconceptions." A baby coos softly from the gallery, the sound somehow underlining the humanity of the moment. The retired teacher dabs at her eyes with a tissue. "The law must be blind to prejudice, not to truth," Judge Barrett says, his voice carrying to every corner of the hushed courtroom. "Today, I confused the two. And for that, Miss Thompson, I owe you a profound apology." Sarah's eyes shine with unexpected moisture, but her voice remains steady. "Your Honor, we all have moments when our assumptions cloud our judgment. What matters is what we do when we recognize those moments." The judge nods, a small smile touching his lips. "Indeed, which is why I'm not only dismissing this case, but I'm also ordering an immediate review of that intersection signage." He turns to address the entire courtroom. "And I'm implementing a new policy requiring all evidence to be thoroughly reviewed before any judgment is rendered, regardless of how the defendant is dressed, or when they last broke a world record." This draws a gentle laugh from the gallery, breaking the tension. The clerk is already typing furiously, documenting the new policy. "Miss Thompson," Judge Barrett continues, "you came to this court seeking justice for a traffic violation. Instead, you've helped us see a larger truth about justice itself. Sometimes it takes an Olympic athlete to remind us that the highest hurdles we face aren't on the track. They're in our own minds." He extends his hand to Sarah, another departure from normal protocol. "Good luck in the trials. Know that you'll have a courtroom full of supporters cheering you on." As Sarah shakes his hand, the gallery breaks into spontaneous applause. The young public defender wipes away a tear, trying to maintain professional composure. The mother in the back row holds her toddler up so that she can see better, whispering, "Remember this, baby." This is what courage looks like, from both sides of the bench. 6 months later, the Atlanta Municipal Court's largest conference room buzzes with anticipation. Every seat is filled, and people line the walls, their eyes fixed on the large screen at the front. Judge William Barrett stands off to the side, watching as Sarah Thompson takes her mark for the Olympic 400-meter hurdles final. The young clerk who changed everything that day in the courtroom sits in the front row, wearing a Team USA shirt with Thompson's name on the back. He's organized this viewing party, turning a routine lunch break into a moment of community celebration. The retired teacher from Cedar Grove High is there too, clutching a photo of Sarah from her high school days. On your marks, the announcer's voice echoes through the speakers. The room collectively holds its breath. In the moments before the starter's pistol, Judge Barrett reflects on the changes of the past 6 months. The obscured stop sign that brought Sarah to his courtroom has been replaced with a new, clearly visible one. More importantly, every intersection in the district has undergone a visibility review, leading to a citywide initiative for better traffic safety. The crack of the starter's pistol snaps him back to the present. Sarah explodes from the blocks, her form perfect, her focus absolute. The crowd in the conference room leans forward as one, watching her attack each hurdle with precision born from thousands of pre-dawn training sessions. "Look at her go," someone shouts as Sarah makes her move on the back straight. The room erupts in cheers, decorum forgotten in the excitement of the moment. Even the bailiff pumps his fist as she clears the final hurdle. The young public defender from that fateful day is live-streaming the watch party on her phone, capturing the moment when Sarah Thompson crosses the finish line first, setting a new Olympic record. The conference room explodes in celebration. Papers fly, coffee cups tip over, and someone starts playing the Star-Spangled Banner on their phone. But the changes sparked by that day in court run deeper than Olympic glory. Judge Barrett's new evidence review policy has become a model for other courts in the state. The local bar association has implemented mandatory bias training, using Sarah's case as a teaching tool. And every morning, rain or shine, Sarah's community track program continues to grow. Later that afternoon, as the excitement dies down and the court returns to its regular business, Judge Barrett receives an email. It's from Sarah, sent just hours after her victory ceremony. Attached is a photo of her on the podium, gold medal gleaming against her Team USA uniform. The message is simple. Some hurdles are meant to make us stronger. Thank you for helping me show that to the world. The judge smiles, remembering the young woman in training gear who stood before him half a year ago. He glances at his updated courtroom policies, now framed on the wall. Justice requires us to look beyond first impressions and hear every voice. As the day winds down, he walks past the courthouse steps where a group of young athletes is gathered. They're wearing mismatched running shoes and bright smiles, waiting for their afternoon training session with one of Sarah's assistant coaches. The program hasn't missed a single day, even with its founder winning Olympic gold halfway across the world. In the parking lot, he passes the intersection where Sarah's story began. The new stop sign stands clear and visible, a simple reminder that small changes can have Olympic-sized impacts. A passing car slows to a complete stop, its driver taking an extra moment to look both ways. Judge Barrett watches the young athletes start their warm-up laps, their dreams as bright as the golden medal now hanging around their mentor's neck. In their determined strides, he sees echoes of Sarah Thompson, and in their future, he sees the ripple effects of one moment when justice paired with understanding to clear a path forward.